I drink Botanist Gin, the first thing that comes to my mind is wild. Now, wild speaks of many things, of nature, remote lands, and of freedom. Wild can be emotional or physical, a place or a feeling, and I believe Botanist Gin's inspiration comes from exploring the potential of wild. To understand the uninhabited, uncultivated, the inhospitable of 240 square miles of the Scottish island of Isla. They saw past the sea of green that covers the landscape, selecting 22 wild botanicals that grow locally, and I was fortunate enough to spend the day with James Donaldson, forager for Botanist Gin, to get a better understanding of the gin's diversity and understand its natural heritage.
I mean, you could forage for plants that are going to bring you flavour, going to bring something into a product or your dinner plate, almost anywhere. But the variety we have, the diversity we have on Isla, in my experience, unparalleled, certainly for the islands of Scotland. We've an immensely complicated geology here. So we sit at the junction of three great fault lines. If you see a geological map of Isla, I mean, it's almost psychedelic, all the different colours and swirls. People do travel from all around the world to see examples of some of these geological formations that you just don't see anywhere else. All of that variety of underlying rock, granite to a big spur of limestone runs right through the middle of the island. Very rare for the west of Scotland. They in turn will influence the overlying soils. So that limestone gives you a fairly basic, very fertile soil. With fabulous farmland here. You know, we've the best farmland on the west of Scotland, never mind the islands. But then from here we can see kind of bare granite hilltops over here. You're looking out in the background there over to sodden acidic peat moors, all in an area that's only 25 by 40 kilometres. So it's incredibly diverse soils, which in turn gives you that biodiversity on top. Lots of little areas of microclimate, all favoured by very different plants. They all have their own requirements, their own habitat. Things like lady's bedstraw, which actually we've got a bit growing here. Out of season, normally we'd have all this picked by June, but it's quite happy up here. It likes a well-drained soil, which is why we're finding it up on top of this ancient hill fort that we're on. It likes quite a basic soil, quite alkali. That will be picking all around the sand dunes. So all around the coastline, you've got beautiful dune systems, white sandy beaches, nice picking. Others will be moving on to the heather, sweet gale, bog myrtle, very much out on the acidic, wet bogland. For the 22, I think for any other island, it would probably be the 6 or similar. You know, you just wouldn't get the same diversity of soils, climates, all in such a compact area. It's one of the things that really drew me to Isla was the variety, the diversity that we have. So we're lucky that way.
So how do you capture the sense of place and the real essence of what it's like to be on Isla? It starts with the 22 foraged flavors they use in the Botanist Gin. There are 9 traditional ingredients not foraged in Botanist Gin that include lemon and orange peel, cinnamon bark, coriander, angelica, orris, and licorice root, cassia, and juniper berries. The 22 wild botanicals foraged on Isla are Gorus windflowers, lady's bedstraw, mugwort, white clover, red clover, spearmint, lemon balm, chamomile. Man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm so glad I'm not a botanist because I could not remember or pronounce these things correctly. Creeping thistle, hawthorn, heather, bog myrtle, watermint, downy birch, juniper, wood sage, wild thyme, tansy, meadowsweet, sweet cicely, and elderflowers. So with all these botanicals to forage each season, when does the foraging begin and how long does it last?
So it's a little different every year. Spring, the whole island would just come up yellow. It's chrome yellow as far as the eye can see. But that's not enough for us. Everything we're picking, everything we're using, we're only doing it for the flavour and for the aroma that it's going to add. There'll be a week or so where we're sat there watching the island coming into bloom, itching to get going, but only after maybe a weekend of warm weather, you'll open the door Monday morning and that aroma just hits you. It's like coconuts. It's like a 1970s sunscreen all over the island, and that's our sign, that's our kind of starter for 10. That's the flavour we're after, and that's when we start picking. From there, we're following them one after the other, really right through until end of September, a week or two into October. So that kind of defines our picking season. But within that, we're going from one to the other, really following them through. Some have quite a long season, 3 months we use in there. From late April, May, they're kind of fully grown, they're in good condition. We can take a little if and when, right throughout the summer, up until late August, they begin to start going over. Others, I mean, the Hawthorn is the one we're most likely to be breaking a sweat about. You've probably got about 2 weeks to get it at its best. And everything we pick needs to be picked at its best, and it needs to be picked dry, generally. And on an island where it can rain 200 weeks of the year, 200 days of the year, sorry, feels like weeks sometimes. If it pours for rain for one of those weeks, it's washing out all the pollen. We've got a really narrow window to be picking that. And again, weather dependent, the wind can strip the blossom. So they're all a little different, and they all have their own distinct kind of tell that you're looking for. Very often you're just working by nose. You know, you can be walking out looking at something you're going to pick, 20 metres back, you're starting to catch it on the wind, you know it's good, you know it's going to give you what you want. So they're all different, they all have individual kind of signs and symbols you're looking for, but middle of March through until late September, October, that's the bulk of the picking season. Ultimately, what we are providing at the end of the season, we refer to as a giant tea bag. So it's about this big, about that high, kind of calico sack. Very much like a tea bag, is a mixture of all of the 22, all carefully prepared, weighed out, mixed at the end of the season, added together. We can't provide that until late September because we need everything from the season to be brought together at the end. Drying is the best way we've got to preserve that material and to keep the flavour in there. Preparation varies enormously, so some of them, I mean, birch leaves, we pick a lot of birch. It brings in this lovely, kind of soft peppery, it's almost like Szechuan pepper. It's got this real resinous, fabulous aroma to it. With those, you'll be going round, you're looking for the leaves when they're fully unfurled in spring, but before they harden off. So again, there's a distinct aroma, but you'll take them between finger and thumb. If they just lift off, you've missed it. If it sticks to one or the other, you know it's still good. With those, you'll take hold of the end of a branch, draw your hand down, big handful of leaves into a rucksack, 2 or 3 branches of each tree, moving on. You bring it back, it gets spread out very simply. I mean, it's wooden racks, we have paper on top. Morning and evening, we turn them all by hand, and after 4 or 5 days, it varies. They'll be dried, they're then weighed to meet the requirements for the recipe, and then they're boxed up, put aside until the end of the year. Others, the one that always sticks in mind, we pick a lot of elderflower, so that fabulous muscat, you know, beautiful aroma, easy picking. The back of each flower, there's a swollen node, and you just take that between finger and thumb and it just snaps off there naturally. Very easy. You can fill a big bucket with elderflower in maybe 20 minutes. Never pick more than 1 bucket. Every part of it, apart from the blossom, is mild, but it's toxic. So we need to strip every individual tiny flower off by hand. 1 hour's picking can be an 11-hour prep. After that, we sit with a small pair of scissors. The thinner the blade is, that way the better. You'll hold them in a narrow V, and you're taking small bunches at a time and just drawing them through there, and that just fires all the flowers off and leaves you just with the bare branches. It's not the most satisfying one when you're there at 11 o'clock in the evening, weeping quietly, still stripping the flowers off, but it's only the flowers we want. That's where the pollen is, that's where the flavour is, that's what we're working to. So they're all different, but virtually everything we strip individual leaves, which can be time consuming. So they're quite meditative in its own way.
So is foraging sustainable, especially on a commercial level such as Botanist Gin? In my opinion, it depends on many factors. The species being harvested, the amount being picked, and the habitat. Most importantly, it starts with the individual forager and or the company and how it places values on people, planet, and profit.
Picking everything we do on Isla. Isla's only a certain size, but we're very, very lucky in that way, even from the very first production run. And bear in mind, 2010, gin was just at the very beginnings of this, phenomenal boom that it's seen. It was a bit fun. It was an experiment. It was something that might only be done once. They didn't know how it would turn out, didn't know if there'd be a market for it. And my predecessors, Richard and Mavis Gulliver, who were botanical scientists on the island, Mavis in particular was adamant, even with that consideration, it might be a one-off, that nothing was going to go in that wasn't abundant, wasn't widespread, wasn't easily accessible on the island. And it would have been easy when you're thinking, it's a one-off, it's a fun little summer project. we'll put a bit of that in, it'll be fine for this one. But she was very firm from the beginning. It was only going to be abundant plants, many of which are agricultural weeds, essentially. They're overlooked or ignored at best. So we've a lot of runway here. I mean, things like heather is just beginning to come into bloom, another couple of weeks. Everything you see in the background here will be bright purple. I mean, we could pick for 1,000 years and you wouldn't even know we'd been there. They're all very abundant, all very widespread. The only thing in there which is vulnerable and threatened, ironically, is juniper, which of course is the base of any gin. Our juniper is not gathered from Isla. We make no secret we add a sprig of Isla juniper to each distillation. It's a symbolic gesture. Globally, it's the most widespread conifer in the Northern Hemisphere. It's doing fine out there, but not so much in Isla, not so much the UK. But by using that little bit, that single sprig, it gives us a platform really to discuss the plight of Isla juniper. We do a lot in the winter when we're not picking. Where there is juniper out there, when it's good condition, we're taking cuttings, we're coaxing them on for 2 or 3 years, and then we've been re-establishing colonies back into the wild on some of the nature reserves. We've been doing a lot of mapping and surveying, and it's actually been very heartening. We covered a lot of ground last winter, and there's considerably more juniper out there than we realised, and considerably more than has ever been recorded. It's still never going to be enough for even one production. We wouldn't dream of touching it, but we're now surveying that, we're mapping it, so we've established a GIS system, geotagging photos, we're recording the condition, the size. So we're doing a lot of work on that in the background, but that really is a symbolic amount. All the others, it can go on endlessly. I mean, nothing can, but we've certainly got a lot of runway. Yeah, I think we'll be picking long after my knees give up before there's any great drama there. So, but yeah, we're working hard. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, we will pick as little as we can from as many areas on the island, and first and foremost, that's a sustainability piece. I mean, right now we're picking watermint. We could go to one area and probably get everything we needed each year, but for how many years before that begins to suffer? There's no shortage of it on the island, so we'll travel around. We'll take as little from as many areas. We'll often revisit areas we picked in previous years, just have a look, check up on it, but you'll let it rest for a couple of years, you know? So there's a sustainability element, but also it's a natural product, really. I mean, the Botanist it's a product of nature, and by taking a little from a lot of areas, there will be local differences, there will be regional differences in taste and flavour. It balances all of that out, rather than, let's say, we pick all the heather, for example, from one patch every year. There's enough heather, you know, and it's resilient. But then 2 years later, we decide to pick from the other side of the island. I can't say I've ever noticed there a difference year to year in the Botanist, but it balances out any regional differences as well for the liquid in the glass. Although ultimately it is, again, a natural product. We've had this discussion with Adam, and in the same way we work with the malt, it's about quality, not consistency. So if there ever was to be a difference from one year to the next, it's not a problem. As long as it's recognisably the Botanist, as long as the quality is there, we're not looking to produce, ultimate consistency versus quality of spirits. So.